She called every Friday night, like clockwork. 52 weeks a year, same address, same complaint, chest tightness, shortness of breath, same woman, every single Friday. I am 69 years old now, retired, 13 years out of the ambulance, but I still hear that dispatcher's voice in my head. Unit 42, possible cardiac, Maple Street, again, that word, again, like it was nothing, like she was nothing. I think about her more than I think about the bad calls, the ones with blood, the ones with body bags. Funny how that works. The ones that break you are not always the ones you expect. It was 1985. I had been a paramedic for about 6 years by then. Working out of Station 11 in Burlington, Vermont. Small city. Cold winters. Real cold. The kind that freezes your equipment, freezes your face, freezes the intravenous tubing if you are not careful. We did not have the gear they have now. No laptops in the ambulance. No electronic patient records. You wrote everything on paper, a clipboard, carbon copy forms that smeared if your gloves were wet, and they were always wet in December. The ambulance was a Ford Econoline, 78 model, white, beat up. It smelled like bleach, and something underneath the bleach that the bleach was trying very hard to cover. The heater worked on one setting, blast furnace or nothing. There was no in between. My partner that year was a man named Gerald. Big guy, quiet, 15 years on the job. Gerald had seen everything twice. He did not rattle easy. But when that call came in on a Friday, even Gerald would sigh. Just a little. Just enough so I could hear it. Her name was Edna Kowalski, 78 years old. Lived alone on Maple Street in a white clapboard house with green shutters. The kind of house that looked like it used to have a family in it. Used to have noise. Used to have Christmas lights. First time we got the call, we went in fast. Full protocol. Stretcher, oxygen, cardiac monitor. The monitor was a big, heavy box. Looked like something out of a television repair shop. Weighed about as much as a car engine. Edna's vitals were fine. Every single time. Blood pressure normal, heart rhythm normal, breathing normal. She would smile at us from her armchair, little woman. White hair pinned up neat, house slippers. An Afghan over her lap, the kind your grandmother knits. We would take her in anyway, protocol. You do not leave a 78-year-old woman who called complaining of chest tightness. You take her in, every time. She would get checked out at the hospital, everything fine. They would call her son. He lived in Connecticut somewhere. He would come up eventually, days later, and she would be back home by the next Friday. I stopped counting after the 9th or 10th call. Gerald stopped commenting after the 5th. We just went. Loaded her up, took her in, wrote the paperwork, went back on duty. The hospital staff knew her by name, the nurses, the orderlies, everybody. There was a word they used in hushed voices, frequent flyer, said it like a diagnosis, like it explained something, like it closed the case. It did not sit right with me, even then. December 1985, third Friday of the month. It started snowing around 4 in the afternoon. By 8 at night, it was a full whiteout, the kind of storm that makes the city go quiet. That particular silence. No cars, no wind, just snow, falling straight down, soft. The call came in at 9:47. I remember the time because the station clock had a loud tick. I had been staring at it. Unit 42, possible cardiac, Maple Street, again. Gerald looked at me. I looked at him. We put on our coats. The roads were bad. Took us almost 12 minutes to get there instead of 5. The whole drive, I kept thinking about how cold she must be. That house had old windows, single pane. I could tell from the frost patterns. We knocked. She called from inside. Come in, door is open. Same as always. I walked in first. The house was warm though, warmer than I expected. She had an oil furnace going, ticking and humming in the back hallway. The front room smelled like something, cinnamon, and something baked, bread maybe, or a pie. I could not tell. Edna was in her armchair. Same armchair, same slippers, same Afghan. But this time, she was looking out the window, not at us, at the snow, just watching it fall. I set the kit down, knelt beside her, checked her pulse, checked her breathing, looked at her eyes. Everything was fine. It was always fine. And then she said something she had never said before. She said, "It is beautiful, isn't it?" The snow. I looked up. Gerald was standing in the doorway. He gave me a look. That look that meant, "You see it too, don't you?" I did. I sat back on my heels for a moment. I looked around the room, really looked. There were photographs on the mantel, a man in a military uniform, a young woman that had to be her, wedding picture, children, grandchildren maybe, all in frames, all dusty, the kind of dusty that happens slowly, over years, when nobody comes to visit. There was one cup on the coffee table, just one cup, and a teapot, still steaming. She had made tea for herself, one cup, one person, on a Friday night. I do not know exactly what happened inside me in that moment. Something just shifted, like a gear catching, like something I had been almost understanding for months finally clicked into place. I said, "Edna, tell me something. Is the chest tightness bad tonight?" She was quiet for a second. Then she smiled. Not at me, at the window, at the snow. She said, "No, dear, not tonight." I stood up, looked at Gerald. He had already started folding up the kit. He understood. He was 15 years in. He understood before I did. I pulled off my gloves, sat down on the sofa across from her. I said, "Edna, do you mind if I have a cup of that tea?" She looked at me then, really looked, the way older women look at younger women sometimes, like they are trying to remember something they lost, like she was checking to make sure I meant it, like she had been fooled before. And then she smiled, the biggest smile I had seen on her in a year of Friday nights. She said, "I always make too much. I always hope someone might stop in." We stayed for 45 minutes. Gerald found an extra cup in the kitchen. We sat and drank tea in that warm little house while the snow came down outside. She talked about her husband, Henry, gone 11 years by then, talked about her son in Connecticut, how busy he was, how she understood. She kept saying that, how she understood. We did not take her to the hospital that night. I filed the paperwork as an unfounded call. No transport required, patient stable. refused further evaluation. That is what I wrote. I thought about that paperwork for a long time after, whether I had done the right thing, the protocol thing. But then I thought about her face when I asked for the tea, that smile. Edna Kowalski died 7 days later, Tuesday morning, in her sleep. Her son found her when he finally drove up from Connecticut. The medical examiner said it was her heart, natural causes, peaceful. The dispatcher mentioned it at roll call. Routine note, patient from Maple Street, Edna Kowalski, passed away. Just like that, a line on a page. Gerald did not say anything. I did not say anything. But after roll call, he put his hand on my shoulder, left it there for just a second, then walked away. I think about what I was taught in training. Assess, stabilize, transport. That is the job. That is the whole job. And for years, I believed that. I believed that medicine was the thing that saved people. But Edna was not sick. She was lonely. And there is no protocol for that, no medication for it, no procedure code to bill the insurance company. There is just a cup of tea, a warm room, someone willing to sit down for 45 minutes and listen to a woman talk about a man named Henry who had been gone 11 years. I have been retired for 13 years now. My knees are shot. My back is not much better. I have grandchildren of my own. A granddaughter, 7 years old, looks just like her mother. I try to call them often, more often than feels natural, because I know what happens when you stop calling. I have seen it from the inside. They say medicine saves lives, and it does. I have seen it do that too. Real saves, dramatic ones, the kind that make you feel like the job means something. But the call I remember most is the one where I put down the kit, took off my gloves, and just sat down. I do not know if it was the right thing to do, professionally, technically, but I know this. She did not die alone that Friday. She had tea. She had company. She had someone who stayed. Maybe that is what saving someone looks like sometimes. Not the paddles, not the medication, not the ambulance ride in the snow, just staying.